Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Ivory, and you are tuned in to the Embracing Neurodiversity podcast, where I share my personal journey of embracing and enhancing the experience of my amazing son who is on the spectrum. Through this journey, I've discovered a lot about myself and continue to grow every day. My goal is to provide you with some useful insights and stories that will inspire you in your own parenting journey. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I am recovering from a really bad cold. It's been a crazy week. It was my birthday, my son's birthday. We have back-to-back birthdays. And this year, for me, first, let me say I'm super, super grateful that I live a life in which I get the chance to celebrate myself in multiple ways throughout the year and do things for myself throughout the year intentionally. And a birthday for me is more so a time to reflect. I don't really use that time to do a celebration for multiple reasons. Number one, I am an introvert and I am not really, I don't take a lot of joy in a lot of attention being placed on me. And although I do love hosting and being around people that I care about and having meaningful conversations, I'm not a person who likes to have a lot of attention on me in terms of these huge parties or I don't know, it's not my thing. I'd much rather have a spa day or travel or nice dining. That's more my vibe. I get a chance to travel and dine and an occasional spa day throughout the year. And I really just honestly took time out this birthday year to just think about where I've been and where I want to go. And of course, I did some things for my son and his birthday, but also in recent years, the birthday season it's a little tricky for me because it was also the time of the year where I gave birth to my son, which was obviously such a life shifting time for me. But I also experienced some loss during this time of year as well in previous years. And so in this season of my life, in unpacking all of that and making sense of it all, my birthday year for this year was melancholy, if you will. It wasn't celebratory, but that's okay. Everything is always as it should be. I want to apologize in advance for the sound of my voice and my stuffy nose because, as I mentioned, I'm recovering from a really bad cold. I think that after celebrating my son's birthday and traveling the previous week for work, things just caught up to me and I got sick this weekend. So I digress from the update. I want to focus today's podcast on something that has been coming up for me in the past couple of days. And it's the idea that everything is a choice, right? I've been thinking a lot about the work that I do with embracing neurodiversity and then also what that means for me as a autism mom and how I parent my son and how transparent I want to be with that and the triumphs and the tribulations, if you will, and what it all means. And also I've been thinking about in the context of my son and his birthday passing and him getting older and his progress and how I am actively and intentionally trying to rule myself in progress and not perfection. So I wanted to talk to you all about that today because I am someone who I've now know has struggled with perfectionism and wanting things to look right and feel right. And I had a partner in the past that said you want everything to be perfect. And looking back, I now know that everyone has their own idea of perfection and what my idea of it is, which is a plethora of things. I'm always trying to meet that. And that's just unhealthy in itself because, again, it's about this idea of being a perfectionist is someone who is always being attached to the outcome of things and attached to how things appear to others, right? And in this era of my life, I am really learning some hard truths about myself and maybe some ugly truths about myself and getting real honest with myself. And I'm really grateful that I have the space and time to do that and unpack that in a real way. But with being a recovering perfectionist, I've learned that it really is like a dog that's chasing their tail. You're not really getting anywhere with that. It doesn't allow space for you to enjoy what life is offering you, and it keeps you in a constant state of dissatisfaction. I have been really sitting in and meditating on committing to progress over perfection. And guess what taught me that? Raising a child on the spectrum, my son. I am fully committed to his journey of progress and celebrating his wins and not necessarily focusing on the things that he can't do, but focusing on the things that he can do and building on that while still pushing him to grow. And one of the things that I'm learning is that if I'm committed to doing that for him, then I need to commit to doing that for myself. And I'm grateful for that lesson. And one of the things that I learned in reading Jada Pinkett Smith's book, Worthy, was that she said that your children are your greatest teachers and they reflect onto you the things that you need to heal within yourself. And that has just been coming up for me time and time again lately when it comes to raising my son. I like peace. I like to sit with my thoughts. I like relaxation. But my son is a fireball. Like he loves to run and jump and flip and bounce off of things. And he's constantly singing and he wants you to spell the same words over and over. He has his repetition that comes along with him being on the spectrum. And then he has his obsessive compulsive tendencies that come along with being on the spectrum where he needs to do the same thing over. And if you don't accommodate it, then that can potentially result in a meltdown. And you all know, if you listen to the podcast, how much those meltdowns cause me anxiety, right? Because it's in direct contrast to my natural state of wanting to be calm. And what has come up for me in recent days is that you still have some things externally within you that are in chaos and that are unsettled. And in a lot of ways, like, not that who Khalil is and his behaviors, I cause them, but who he is and his behaviors are reflecting upon me something that I need to heal within myself or challenge within myself. So an example of that is when he is having a meltdown. Sometimes they're tantrums, most of the time they're meltdowns. And if you want to know the difference, check out the podcast episode, Meltdowns versus Tantrums. But when he's in those moments and I get unsettled, I want to also have a meltdown at the same time. But what is coming up for me in those moments is that if you want to be committed to remaining calm and remaining in a state of peace, the highest level of doing that is doing it even in moments of chaos, even in moments in which your child is having a meltdown, right? Which is incredibly hard to do, especially because as parents, protect our children. We want to help our children when they are in need. We want to save our children when they are in distress. And when it comes to observing your child in a moment of having a meltdown, the core difficulty is literally not being able to do anything but allow it to pass. Now, there are some tactics you can do, which I talked about in the meltdown versus tantrums episode, such as squeezes or letting them know that everything is okay or acquiescing to the thing that they need in the moment, whether it is their iPad or electronic or music or bubbles or whatever the case may be. But there are moments where literally none of that, and autism parents know this. There are moments when your child's gotten to the point of a meltdown where nothing is going to help and you just have to allow the meltdown to take its course. And that is incredibly difficult to do. And so the only thing that you can do is sit with your child and ensure that they're not harming themselves or anything around them. But this episode is not about meltdowns. I just wanted to make that point around how I had to unpack my need for perfection because in raising a child on the spectrum, there's so many unpredictabilities that if you keep trying to run this race of perfection, you will not be able to be sustainable as a parent. And that, and also the grace and compassion that I give my son with allowing him to be on his journey and giving him space to have progress instead of perfection, reminded me that I need to afford myself the same thing, right? So I want to provide parents out there, especially single parents raising children on the spectrum. I want to offer you that same food for thought, the same grace and compassion that you give your child, the same way that you celebrate their progress, the same way that you are patient with them. Please give yourself those same qualities. Give yourself that same level of grace. You deserve it. I'm learning to unpack the whole idea of perfection and where it's coming from and why there's a need for that and root myself in progress. But in doing that, I am learning that it is a active choice, a consistent choice every day, sometimes every hour, to talk myself off of that ledge of perfection and do the thing or sit in whatever feeling or complete the task, not necessarily with that without being attached to the outcome, but instead being committed to the process, right? All of these things are related. If I know that everything is a choice, and I mean everything, how do I become aware of that and actively commit to choosing, right? And one of the ways that I'm learning to do that is by listening and being observant and being present, listening intentionally to people and what's going on around you, observing people and what's going on around you, and being present with what's going on around you and your emotions. And then when you are actively doing those three things, listening, observing, and being present, having dialogue with yourself about how you feel about it, and then choosing to make a choice based on your feeling. Now, in choosing to make a choice based on your feelings, use wisdom, use past experiences. Don't be impulsive about your decision making based on your feelings, right? We know that feelings are derived from a myriad of things. Sometimes it's trauma, and sometimes it's purely from who you are as a person, as a human being, and making a choice that is healthy for you in the moment, based on how you feel and based on what's going to keep you feeling safe and secure. The other thing that came up for me is this idea of how oftentimes I'm asked, like, how I'm able to embrace my son's diagnosis and choose to be on this journey with him and celebrate the good and all of that. And I often say that it is an active choice daily. A lot of it did come easy to me because I am someone who just fundamentally believes that everyone should be able to live their lives uniquely and differently and exactly as they are in the world. I am someone who is rooted in equity and inclusiveness in that way. And yes, I was 10 tones down already with my son after I found out about his diagnosis because I'm like, you are who you are, and I would never attempt to change that. And I fundamentally believe that we bring children into this world to live out their full actualized human lives. We don't bring them into this world to make them who we want them to be. We bring them into this world to keep them safe so that they can discover and be who they need to be. And with that, I was okay. But it was the difficulties that came with autism that I struggle with, like the speech delay and not being able to have conversations with my child, like the picky eating and making a full meal and my son not wanting to eat it, and then being concerned about the nutritional balance. It is the meltdowns, those things. It's the difficulties that come with it that I'm often asked, like, how do you cope? How do you deal? And it is an active choice daily to commit to understanding like this is hard right now, but this too shall pass, right? So being aware of my emotions in the moment when something difficult is happening and choosing to not be reactive to it, but allow it to take its course and pass is the only way that I know how to deal with it. And that's not to say that there aren't difficult moments. There are. That's not to say that I don't have moments where I break down about it or I cry about it. I most certainly do. But then I dry my tears and I keep going because it's a part of the journey. It's a part of the journey, right? And so a part of that, uh, removing yourself from perfection to progress is being committed to the process, being committed to the journey and not necessarily the outcome. That's not to say that you don't care about the outcome because I have a vision and I have a plan and I have hope for the future of my child, but I don't get so tied to that vision that it impacts how I engage with my son day to day. In fact, I allow that vision and that plan to inspire me and motivate me to stay committed to the day to day, right? And so I wanted to remind you all that everything is a choice and we can choose how we see things. We can choose how we feel about things. We can choose how we respond to things. But the only way to do that healthily is if we can begin to unpack our own deeply rooted mindsets about how we actually feel about things. The only way that we can make healthy choices about situational experiences is if we are allowing ourselves moments of healing so that raw healing so that we can purge a lot of our past trauma. Because the other part about being reactive and having emotional reactions to things that are difficult is that it can feel like a trigger, right? Once we begin to think through what those triggers are and how the root of it, and to unpack it and heal it, we can begin to make better choices around how we experience things. It's this idea of when I used to teach and work in the schools and the kids would get into fights or arguments, they would always say, she made me mad or she made me do this. And even in relationships as adults, we're often like, you made me fill in the blank. But at this stage in my life, I'm at the point where I fundamentally believe that no one can make you do anything. No one can make you react anyway. What happens is someone can say or do something that can be completely insulting or completely disrespectful or completely uncomfortable for you, and you feel those emotions. And because we are so unhealed in so many ways, we react to it immediately. But when we begin to step back and take private time to ourselves to really get real about our stuff, when people seek to disrespect or hurt you in any way, or when you're just having a hard day, or when your child is just doing the most, when you're doing that healing work, you can step back and say, okay, like this is happening and I could feel myself feeling away, but there's something from this I need to learn, or this isn't about me, this is about them. So let me just stay grounded within myself. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to respond. And that takes practice, but that is the active choice that we have. That is the autonomy that we have over our lives, is that we can choose how we respond to people. That's the power that we have. We can choose how we feel about how we feel about raising our child who is on the spectrum. That's the power that we have. And in choosing, that's not to say you negate how your grief or you negate your anger. No, it doesn't mean that. Those feelings need to manifest. But I always say it in most podcasts, those feelings need to manifest in private spaces or with people that you trust, or with a coach, or with a therapist. But when you are putting your parenting hat on, or when you are engaging with others, position yourself within yourself as a person in a position of power, who has power over how they respond to things, right? How we respond to anything in life is our choice. The situation, the event, the circumstance may not be in our control, but our response is. And that's really the most powerful tool. And once I realized that, I just, it was like an aha moment for me. That's the most powerful thing that I could ever have. It's like how I allow people to make me feel. And the other piece to that too, because I'm like a thinker, like I think all day and I can go down a rabbit hole of stuff and unpack stuff, create a whole story about something that may or may not even be true. And for me, I'm also realizing I have an active choice to not do that. And so when I'm recounting a conversation I had with someone and I didn't necessarily like what they said or how they said it, I can get myself real riled up about that and begin to conjure up a plan of how I'm going to respond. But now I'm in a place where I'm like, you know what? Stop. Why do you care? If they don't have any impact on your safety, your child's safety, your finances, why does it really matter? It does not. And so I'm learning to stop myself even in those moments. I say all that to say that I want to remind you that everything is a choice. I want to encourage you to feel your feelings and be human in safe spaces, but also actively choose how you want to respond to the people in your life, the situations in your life, and root yourself in the power of choice. So, with that, I'll leave you with this quote: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I hope everyone has a beautiful holiday. And if you don't, that's okay too. Hold on to yourself. Holidays can be hard. They can be sucky. They can be shitty. It has its pros and cons. Find some time with yourself. Take care of yourself in any way that you know how to get through this season. And if this is a season that you enjoy, bask in it. Until next time, take care of yourself.